Hello, my name is Celia Lacayo with LA Social Science. Don't forget to subscribe. I am the Associate Director of Community Engagement, and I teach in the Chicano, Central American, and African American Studies Department. Today we have a wonderful political scientist, Natalie Masuoka from UCLA, who was just currently named Chair of Asian American Studies, who brings with us a lot of expertise today that we're going to talk about as we begin launching a series leading up to the very critical November presidential election. Hello, Natalie. How are you today?
Great, thank you. Thanks for having me and highlighting our study.
Thank you so much for your time. So let's begin. Can you tell us how is the growing demographics of Latino and Asian American population affecting elections?
Asian American Latinos are the fastest growing populations in the United States. And so what that means is that they are continually adding new voters to the electorate. And so this is one of the reasons why we decided to highlight both of these communities together, is that the new direction, we argue, of the electorate is going to need to, politicians and elected officials are therefore going to need to consider these growing new electorates that for every election are adding new voters to the political system.
And can you tell us what are some of these specific issues that the Latino and Asian immigrant communities are advocating for?
I think I like to refer to the Latino Politics and Policy and Politics Institute, Sonia Diaz, whose tagline for the Institute is "Every issue is a Latino issue." And I think we could also say the same thing, every issue is an Asian American issue. I think it's oftentimes we pigeonhole our communities too much into thinking that there are very specific issues, say like immigration, or a more prototypical issue that is of the most importance to the community, that both of these communities are interested in quality education, good health care, fair immigration policy, and fair treatment, particularly when it comes to things like voting rights, jobs, what have you. So we like to say that these communities are fighting for various different issues. It's a very diverse community, and we hope that politicians and elected officials are really assuming, right, that they need to take into account both of these communities when we're talking about a wide variety of policies.
Thank you. We often hear that sectors of these communities don't vote or don't get out to vote. But can you tell us what are the barriers that continue to create challenges for folks in these communities to actually be able to have access to vote?
Right, yeah. So I think this is one of our most important issues, specifically when it comes to thinking about Latinos and Asian American voters. Since their population is driven largely by immigration, these new immigrants have multiple barriers that they have to cross in order to become a voter. They have to become a citizen, they have to register, right? And these are major hurdles for incorporating new voters. And so education, outreach, mobilization, these are all, of course, really key factors that ensure that these populations really can exercise their vote when it comes to when it comes to the ballot box.
In your study, it also shows that oftentimes in these various communities, as you were talking about, the poll place where they're supposed to vote changes, or so they could go there and it's no longer there. So what are political parties doing, or what should they be doing to incorporate and value Latino and Asian voters?
I think this is a common criticism against mainstream parties today, which is most of the outreach really tends to be symbolic. They have a commercial in a non-English language. They kind of maybe do some sort of event of some sort. But really, we're really trying to push parties and our leaders to think about structural changes encouraging easier processes to register, easier processes to cast a ballot. This is one of the reasons why we really are fighting for various different things, like considering mail-in ballots, considering more open processes for registration, challenging some of the new you could say kind of new fads in electioneering, which is things like voter ID laws, which we know oftentimes has a discriminatory function to them because they do tend to target voters of color. And so what we really want to do is think about these underlining structural and institutional barriers for voting, and this is really what's critical for ensuring that communities of color can equitably cast a ballot.
Along in your study, we also understand that these folks are actually, in fact, making big changes already. We are in California going to see affirmative action on the ballot in November. So can you tell us what does your data and your team that have collected this very specific data demonstrate how these communities are affecting local, state, and national elections?
So what we did for our study is we were looking at precincts, or effectively neighborhoods, that were predominantly either Latino or Asian American. And we wanted to analyze, did the number of ballots go up in terms of the total number of ballots cast go up between 2016, which was our last presidential primary, to 2020. We also wanted to see that in those neighborhoods, who was the top vote getter, which candidate was the top vote getter, Biden, Sanders, or one of the other candidates. And so what we found was that, one, unfortunately, total number of ballots cast did not necessarily increase at as high of rate as we would have liked to see in 2020 relative to 2016. And so what we really want to point out is the true emphasis and importance of mobilizing the vote, getting out the vote in November, because there were various different things, and it is our data actually was collected before the safer in place and the stay-at-home initiatives would have put into place in various different states. So it's not necessarily to say that COVID, we see the effects of COVID in even our early data, but now that we know that really we are going to be living with COVID for the duration, this is going to even present even more exacerbated challenges for getting out the vote. And so what we really want to do is impress upon the importance of voting rights, get out the vote campaigns, right, and education, particularly because we do think that a lot of election practices are going to change in November due to the various different stay-at-home initiatives that are in place in various different areas.
So it's very clear that these groups of voters are very important, not only as their demographics are increasing, but because they have a lot of valuable contributions to our society and important things to ask for. So what do you believe are some projections as to how these voters stand to make a difference in this year's presidential election?
If voters of color, and particularly for Latinos and Asian Americans, decide and are able to actually cast a ballot, and I emphasize the ability because we are in fact very, very worried about equitable voting rights in this country right now, that they really do have the influence because they are growing, because they are taking up a larger share of various different precincts and neighborhoods across the country, that they really do have the potential to swing an election in their favor. We saw this in 2008 with Barack Obama. The reason why Barack Obama was really able to carry into the presidency is that he was effectively able to get out the vote for communities of color. We really do think that that is very possible for November, but protecting the vote and mobilizing the vote is the most important focus that we need to highlight for November.
Thank you so much, Natalie. So you can see that the amazing research that is being done at UCLA is not only relevant and current, but is also going to speak to the election and politics that affects us all. I want to thank Natalie again for her time. I remind you to please subscribe to LA Social Science. And again, my name is Celia Lacayo, and we will catch you next time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.